And our speaker today is Dr. Hunsucker, and he is president and CEO of a national, National Aquatic Safety Company, which was founded in 1974. The mission of the company is to reduce the loss of human life due to drowning. His extensive experience in the aquatic industry has been directed towards that mission. He is noted for the development of innovative safety and risk management systems. His work in aquatics in general, and with many of the major water parks in particular, has resulted in numerous publications, honors, and awards. He has published extensively with over 60 referred publications, many of which were in aquatics. He holds degrees in mathematics and engineering with a PhD in mathematics. He is currently a registered engineer in the state of Texas and a professor emeritus of the College of Engineering at the University of Houston. Please help me welcome Dr. Hunsucker.
A lot of that sounded familiar. Of course, a lot of it I've probably forgotten. All right, let's talk about what's in this talk and why it might be important. Part of the problem that we have, and truthfully in all of aquatics, is gathering information in which to make an intelligent decision. Now, one of the attributes that my company has, and we work with a lot of the larger water parks in the U.S., is we demand rescue reports. All of our clients have to submit us rescue reports at the end of the season. If we ever have a loss of spontaneous respiration, then that requires a more in-depth investigation. And from that information, we can make what we hope is an intelligent decision. And this is one of the major problems we have in aquatics, is gathering enough data. Because right now there is as there will be in any area, there is a tremendous difference between theory and application. When you think something sounds good, you better prove it with what you're doing and then take a look at it. Now let's see if I said anything at all. They trained me on this thing. We'll just see if it works. All right, we're going to look at a typical year of rescue statistics. Then we're going to look at some historical trends that come from that. We're going to try and identify some high-risk attractions and high-risk guests. We're going to take an in-depth look at incidences which involve the loss of spontaneous respiration. Here's one of the things you probably don't know if you don't deal with the research into this mess. The definition of drowning is not universally agreed on. Part of the problem is that for doctors, drowning is a condition or state of the victim. For lifeguards, drowning is a process. We worry about it. It may or may not end in fatality. So that leads to a lot of confusion in the way that data is gathered. But what we're going to look at, we take a pretty hard look at 63 million guests and 56,000 rescues. So if you want to know what happens with rescues, we can give you some insight, at least in our environment. And this is what we learned from that. So here's some stuff that's kind of interesting in water parks, and I would tell you, of these 56,000 rescues, not all of them came from water parks, but probably 99.9% did. But we end up with about 1.6 rescues per guard. We get about 93.1 rescues per 100,000 attendants. We get about 1 rescue a day. Now, some parks will beat the devil out of that. Some parks will be up to 10. I can take you to some places and let you sit there for 30 minutes and you will see a person drowning, I guarantee you. And I'll mention what that attraction is in just a minute. And if you don't believe me, you come see me this summer. I think the rescue rate in the water parks is higher than it is in flat pools. But I have to tell you, there's virtually no flat pool data out there. There is a few, but you know, people talk about 35 rescues. And I'm looking at 56,000 rescues. So I'd love to see a way to get real good data for flat water pools. It could help us a lot, but I don't know how to do that. The complexity of the facility is probably a reason for this higher rate, and I guarantee you our guards are quick on the victim. We're quick on the victim. We have one park that gives a pin for your first rescue. First time, and by the end of the season, almost all of those kids will have pulled a victim. All right, signal detection theory. This is a little industrial engineering. I hope it doesn't beat you to death, but what it says is this. If the signal, if there's a high density of things you're looking for, you're more likely to find them than if there's a low density. What? Okay, go over this again. Let's suppose you see one every day. You're more likely to see one tomorrow than you would if you only see one every year. And you're more likely to identify that as a victim, even if a victim is there. The more frequent the rescue, the more likely they are to see it. And that's straight up out of industrial engineering and human factors. So if they expect to see one, they're more likely to see it. And that has a lot to do with why our rescue rate's so high. All right, this is, we looked at a particular year. This will tell you where they're at. 0 to 3 feet, you got about 5%. 3 to 5 feet, you got about 37%. 5 feet to 7 feet, about 15, and 7 on up, about 35, and then over 10. And we're seeing very few facilities now being built with water that's over 10 feet. Matter of fact, most of your bigger water parks are coming in at 5 feet or less. And a lot of your flat water pools are. But before you say that makes them safer, let's keep going. If you look at that, 3 to 5 feet was the most common, but now this is an interesting statistic. 42% of them were at 5 feet or less. Shallow water is not safe water. Even though you, far hard, you're late. Look at them come in here dragging it. Would you even be embarrassed to do that? I'd be embarrassed to do that. Look at old Farhard coming in here. I hope you, okay. Farhard and I have been friends for longer than dirt has been invented. So if I get a chance to pick on him, I'm going to do it. Anyway, look at that. Shallow water is not safe water. That's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have. Now, 7 feet and over is pretty dangerous too, but there's a reason for a lot of that, and I'll talk about it in a minute. Now look at this guy. Now, I particularly want you to pay attention to that 2.7%. Here's something that I truthfully find embarrassing. And I will also tell you I don't know how to deal with this, but the fact that drowning is the leading cause of accidental death in children 4 years of age and under in the United States, to me is embarrassing. We should be able to do something about that. And we need to, all of us as aquatic professionals, figure out a way to do that. But if we look at this, we see about roughly 3%. Then you get down to 4 to 6 and 7 to 12. Now, here's one of the real issues in parks, and I deal with emails with this all the time. And this is, how old should a child be before they can come to a facility unescorted? And if you look, the numbers are all over the board. You'll see some flat water pools go down to 6 years of age. You'll see some of your indoor water parks go up to 16. But what this stuff is telling you is if you look at that 12 and under, which will talk to it right there, 62% of them were 12 and under. So we can make a strong case for being at least 12 and under. 62% of these rescues were for children 12 years in age and under. Now, about 24% were 6 and under, so which is also a scary thing. So whenever you get to wondering about how old should it be, and you know, one of the things that amazes me is how many facilities don't have a rule. They don't, I ask them, I say, well, how old does a kid have to be? Well, you know, and I mean, well, get a rule and enforce it. And then I would encourage you to go 12 and under. And if you got any guts at all, kick it up to 14, but I don't have that kind of guts to make that recommendation. Now, it could be, and that bottom bullet's important, it could be that the reason why this percentage is so high is because the percentage of attendance of that age group is that high. But I don't have that data, and I don't have a way to get it. See, I'm looking at 63.8 million people, and I can get the age in the rescues, but I can't get the age of the people who attended the park or the facility. Well, this one, more boys than girls. You girls all know boys are half crazy. Girls are a little bit shyer around risk-taking activities. It could be what's causing that. But I'm not a psychologist, so I don't really know. I'm just telling you that's what it is. If I'm wandering in your way, when I'm wandering up and back, just push me aside a little and I'll move. Now we get to this baby. This talks about where the action is. And if you look at this bowl body slide thing, if you go to a park that has a bowl body slide, sometimes they're called toilet bowls. Now, when we talk about a bowl body slide, we are not talking about one you run with an inner tube. We're talking about one you run without a tube. You go stand by that sucker for half an hour, you will see a rescue. They come out of there completely and totally disoriented. They're head up, head down. And what makes it worse is there's no nice way to make the rescue in that facility because there's no way really to get behind the victim because they're falling into a pit that's about 10 to 12 feet on an edge, a rectangular pit. Water's 8 to 10 to 12 feet deep. That's another interesting question. I got asked by a slide company once, how deep should the water be under one of these bowls? I said, well, how deep should it be under a diving board? And they wanted to make it 6 feet deep. And I said, if you do that, you're going to kill somebody. But anyway, bowl slides are notorious. And next, right behind them, are any slide that goes into water 5 feet or deeper. So if you're going to put a water slide in, put it in with a 3.5 foot deep catch pool or with a run out. Stay away from the deep water. And preferably, for me, I like the run outs because they're less prone to injury. All right, what else is in there? You can see we're getting about 13% in these, and most of these water slide, body slide catch pools will be 3.5 feet. Why 3.5 feet, you ask incredulously? You ain't going to ask me, I'm going to tell you the answer. I thought you'd never ask. Because the general standard for 7-year-olds is 48 inches. If you look at the normative statistics for height, 7-year-olds are about 48 inches. And you generally don't want kids younger than 7 on any slide that is very aggressive. Now, if it's not aggressive, you got children's slides, of course, but you start running some of the hardcore stuff, you don't want to get them much younger than 7, and I wouldn't put them on the real active free fall drop slide. I'd go up to 12 if it was up to me. I'd go up to 48 inches. I'd go way above 48 inches. All right, so that's where they come from.
Is height actually a good predictor of age?
Sir?
Is height actually a good predictor of age?
Yes and no. Okay. Now, yes, it is a good predictor in the fact that it gives us a lot of information about the child. No, in the fact that it is, when you look at the statistics of it all, you're looking at 48 inches and 7 years old is probably the mean of a normal distribution. So you got kids on either side of that. So there'll be a 5-year-old that's 50 inches tall, and there'll be an 8-year-old that's 47 inches tall. But there's more to it than the depth of the catch pool. There also has to do with the development of the body to be able to handle the forces that the water slide causes. And some of those babies can really put the hurt on you. So that's when I talk about those free fall drop slides. Up to me, they'd be 12. But I haven't had a lot of luck convincing people of that, so I'm just gathering the data. All right, is this enough on this slide? Nobody waved their hand, so we'll look at another one. Bowls and deep catch pools over 50%. You put deeper moving water in it, then you up the complexity. And I will say this to you too right now. You cannot guard a complex slide water park system the same way you guard a flat water pool. There is a world of difference between those. And it is the very normal and common mistake for people to make. All right, so water parks have a lot of rescues. Deep slides are very rescue prone. Traveling under very high risk victims. Shallow water is not safe water. So that kind of sums up what we've said so far. Now we get to some that I find a little bit more interesting. Most water slides will pick up an injury between $250,000 and $1.5 million. You cannot handle that. Do not put a water slide in your facility. What? You bet. You go show me a water slide. I'm going to look at your rescue rate. And I'm going to find that you probably had a significant injury on that slide between $250,000 people and $1.5 million people. Hey, about 1.4 per 100,000 people choked to death on an ingested solid. What's that have to do with anything? Well, a water park may pull 300,000 people in a year. That slide rate may be and usually is, well over 100,000 in a year. So you get up anything above 100,000, you're doing pretty good. It's a physical activity, and physical activity comes with risk. And we cannot do away with all the risk. I'd love to say I could make a water slide that won't hurt you, it won't kill you, but you can't do it. You can't walk 100,000 people across the parking lot with somebody really getting hurt. So you need to look at the statistics behind all of it. And of course, like me, learn to lie with them. All right, capsizes, slide rash, minor bumps almost daily on any slide. Changes in water flow, though, can be critical and can change a tame slide into a killer. It can put you all the way out the end of a run out. They can do a lot of really bad things to you. So you better be sure that you have some handle on water flow. I strongly encourage you, if you have a water slide, have a flow meter. And a flow meter on each channel, not just on the main pipe that goes up that hits a manifold at the top and goes through different flumes. Okay, now let's talk about these guys. We don't talk about drowning, we talk about LSRs. If I get to the point where the kid's not spontaneously breathing, then I don't have to worry about whose definition of drowning I'm using. If they quit breathing, now a lot of the parks hate this because we get them back. I say, I don't care if you got them back or not, they drown. And that's an LSR. And that goes in my database as a major incident. And I'm not going to let you playing blues with me to say, but they live. Yeah, they live, but they lost spontaneous respiration are very important to us. We looked at the data going backwards from 2009 season, all from the company. And as I've said before, the term drowning is ambiguous, so I'm going to use LSRs. There's no ambiguity in that term. They're either breathing on their own or they're not. And I don't care if they had a heart attack in your pool, that's still going in as an LSR. Okay, this is a swag. Anybody know what a swag is? This is a technical engineering term.
Swinging wild.
Scientific wild-ass guess, okay? This is a swag. This is how I feel. If you don't get to them in 2 minutes, you're in trouble. If you don't get to them in 4 minutes, you're going to lose. You put that victim under and they're not breathing over 4 minutes, you're going to lose. And one of the things I would encourage you to do in any facility you own is to go out there and do a realistic test of how long it takes. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to be up between 2 and 3 minutes. And the long pole in your tent, unless you have the kids standing there, if you're doing something like the backboard pop-out, the long pole in your tent is going to be the extrication step. And we probably have one of those in here. Find a way to cut down that time to intervention, because these are realistic numbers. Then you talk, well, the fire department's going to be there in 4 minutes. Really? Try that sometime. Unless they're right next door, this guy goes down, it's going to take you 30 seconds to a minute to figure out what's going on. And then you're going to have to call them, and then they're going to have to come and then figure out what they're doing. You don't win this game by being good at CPR. You win this game by being good at scanning and observing and identifying victims. All right, this is our protocol for scanning, victim identification, getting to, moving and extracting into water intervention, out of the water intervention, and very, very, very aggressive management. And that bottom line, aggressive management, probably ought to be aggressive intelligent management. If your in-service training consists of doing 45 minutes of CPR and 15 minutes of water polo, then you're already working on the backside of the process. And then when you realize that CPR works somewhere between 5 and 7% of the time, if you really do get into full-blown cardiac arrest, I'm asking you, why don't you get to the point where you don't need to do CPR, and why don't your training concentrate on that? And not to say you shouldn't do it, but do say, think about what it is. All right, where these LSRs came from, we're going to look at where they came from and what happened. There's a variety of attractions, a large number of swimmers, large number of trained lifeguards, a large number of rescues. We have a multi-level guard hierarchy. We will have guards. There will be a head guard or a guard foreman, and it's just like the span of control. Usually we'll have that. 8 to 10 guards will be under a head guard. Over those will be some sort of over manager that'll overview it. We have some parks that have more than 8 to 10, but it's rare. They're all, and if you want to talk about open facilities, open water, I would send you over to say, talk to USLA. All I do is this kind of stuff. And we're very, very quick on the victim. All right, we do, and this is another one, we get a lot of trouble out of this one. We do our in-the-water intervention. We hit that victim real quick. We pop 5 Heimlichs on them in a heartbeat. It takes you 4 to 6 seconds to do that. And everybody in the world says, don't do that, don't do that. And I'll tell you in a minute where that's all led. And then, once we get onto the deck, we go immediately into choke test compressions while somebody else is fumbling to get the gloves on. And as soon as we get gloves and equipment there, then we roll into full-blown 2-man CPR. But our goal is for there to be no time where there's nothing being done to restore respiration. And the question is this working or not working? And I'll talk about that in a minute. We usually do about 5 chest compressions before equipment gets there. If you think about putting on equipment, it takes you about 15 to 20 seconds just to put on gloves. And if you're going in straight into full-blown CPR, your victim played on your deck 15 to 20 seconds, you haven't done a thing for them. And remember that 2 minutes you're in trouble, and 4 minutes you're probably dead. Okay? Once we get the equipment there, we'll do 2-man CPR. No time is the victim on the deck without intervention occurring. Now, this is about this is the real world, guys. This is about how long it takes when you look at what happens. Now, you know, every time I do this, somebody always says, man, my guards are perfect. They will know it's a victim in a heartbeat. No, they don't. Come on, be real. I can't even do it much quicker than that. And I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of victims. You're going to spend about 15 to 30 seconds for that guard to be, yep, I got one. Unless he gets a lot of major symptoms in a hurry. As an aside, by the way, if you want to know the victim's most difficult to identify, the victim's most difficult to identify is the one who shows you the least symptoms. The quiet drowner is the one they have the hardest time finding. Okay, so it's going to take you about 15 to 30 seconds to do that, to get from the chair. And this, by the way, this was a set of time drills done in a wave pool with the waves off, with the victim about 30 feet in front of the lifeguard stand and moved halfway between the deep water stand and the head wall of the wave pool, which made it about another 15 to 30 feet. So the guard was actually running the hypotenuse of an equilateral right triangle. So it took about 15 to 20 seconds for that guard to get off that chair and to get that victim head up. That is, to get them off the bottom and get their head up in 8 feet of water. Now these we did not do any in the water intervention. But look at that head up to extrication and position for CPR. That's the long one. That's where you better find a quick way to get them out. Now, I will also tell you this, that you may not like this either. I don't care what you teach them. You teach them any extrication method you want, but I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. They're going to drag that victim out of the pool. They're not going to do anything sophisticated. They're not going to do anything with a backboard. Their adrenaline is going to be pumping sky high, and they're going to drag that victim right up on the deck. And that's where it's going to happen. So when you teach extrication, whatever method you teach, I would encourage you to emphasize protect the head and spinal column of the victim. And I don't care if you try and scare them out of the water by yelling alligator or whatever, but teach them to protect the head and spinal column of the victim, because that's what's going to happen. And in every one of these cases I've looked at, that's the way it went. So it's not a matter of, oh, well, and here's where, you know, all of these extrication methods, the theory of it is great, but the kids don't do it. Okay, it takes a long time. Getting the equipment in place takes a long time. So you're looking somewhere 2 to 4 minutes. That's real world. Now go home and experiment with it. Try it. Set up your own stage. Now don't cheat. Don't have all the kids say, all right, you get ready with a backboard. You have the gloves already on. Set it up in a realistic fashion, and you're going to find that before you do any intervention on the deck, it's going to be 2 to 4 minutes. I wish it was shorter, but it's not going to be, unless you're lucky. It's just not happening. Now, We looked at 56,000 rescues. It's 87.8 per 100,000. The LSRs are interesting to me. Of course, that's where it's at. We went to the well 32 times. 4 of the 32 times we lost. Out of 63.8 million people, we had 4 fatalities. And I'd give anything to be able to get them back. But we had 32 times when we probably should have had a fatality, and we got 28 of those back. Now, if we look at where these LSRs came from, I keep punching the laser thing. All right, CDC data estimates about 0.6 per 100,000 people drowned in pools. That's their guess. We did a study across the state of Texas where we surveyed all of the public pools about how many people drowned and how many people came, and that ended up being about 0.7 per 100,000. The LSR rate for water parks is about our LSR rate is about 0.05 per 100,000. So we don't lose or have near as many get in trouble. So it's about 1/10 of the flat water pool drowning rate. Now, our fatality rate for this protocol I just showed you, and by the way, I'll talk to you about that protocol in just a minute, but our fatality rate is 0.00635 per 100,000. It's roughly 100 times better than a fatality rate estimate from CDC. And I've got the data that backs up what I'm doing. Now, is it the only thing to do? Of course not. So what I would encourage you to do is think about what you're doing and figure out a way to cut down the time to intervention. And because that's the key. First of all, don't let them get there. Then the key is be quick at what you're doing. Find a way. And again, if you look at the gender in LSRs, it wasn't much different than that year data we looked at. You see more males than female. We have months that are undecided, but there was no real variation from the typical year figures. Now this is interesting, and I'll tell you why it's interesting. I really want you to look at that 18.8%. That's a really interesting figure to me, and I'll talk about why in a minute, because this will tell you more than just looking at the data. Only 2.7% of the rescues were 3 and under. Do you remember that? But this is telling you 18.8% of the LSRs were 3 and under. It's telling you your young'uns, the little ones, go down quicker and harder. They become a very serious high-risk victim, and the water that becomes very dangerous to you is the water that these children may be in. It can happen very quick, and that is significantly different at the 1% level. I am 99.9% sure that these two means are different. So 12 and under is not quite as variant, but it is. You look at the LSRs on 12 and under, it's 62%, but only 53% were rescues. And that's a little bit scary. Okay, we look at the depth. If you look at that, you can see about 65% is going to end up being 5 feet and under. About 65% is 5 feet and under. And look, that's what's interesting here is we had 65% of LSRs were 5 feet and under, but only 42% of the rescues were 5 feet and under. It's telling you again, shallow water is dangerous. Now, why? Well, before I say that, let me say another. If we look at a cross-hatching the data, we'll get about 22% were 5 years or less and 5 feet or less. So it's telling you this shallow water and the young'uns are the places where we got problems. Now this is the one where they all lie. How long was the victim under? Oh wow, we were so quick. So we changed our data collecting system. Now when I ask how long was the victim under, then I make them give me how sure they are of that. They have to say I'm 0 to 25% sure, 26 to 50% sure of that time, because I know that the normal thing to do is what? if you were the lifeguard or the manager there, is to say it was less time than it really was. So this data, I'm not sure I really believe, but it's probably close. What you'll see, their estimate is that about 85% of the time, it was a minute or less. Now, I tell you, this really is data. You imagine you're standing on deck and someone says, well, how long were they? Oh, just a heartbeat. They may have been under there 3 days. Yes, sir, you had a question?
This is for saves or just LSRs?
This is LSRs. It's all LSRs.
Yeah,
This is the amount of time that person was underwater before there was a... Okay, it's like I said, it is the most suspect. Short submersion time, though, does not guarantee you survival. We have drownings. Our fastest recorded drowning is 38 seconds. It was 38 seconds from the time the kid's head went under until they had him on the deck and started CPR. There is a lot of stuff going on with drowning, particularly in that 3-year age and less, and it's very similar to crib death. And I talked to a MD out of Harvard's medical school, and I'm asking, how can it be that a kid's under the water less than a minute and we can't get him back? And he started telling me all of these things that were really scary. And then I said, well, of course I want to know, well, what should we do? And some of you may not remember this, but honest to goodness, he suggested the precordial thump. And I do not have the nerve to do that. I'm not going anywhere near that. I'm going to stay where I'm at. But precordial thump, when CPR, I may be showing my age here, but Farhard's old enough to remember. When CPR first came, he's older than dirt. When CPR first came out, the first thing you did was called a precordial thump. You took the fist and slammed them right in the middle of the sternum. And that was called a precordial thump. The intent was to restart the heart, to get it back into the electrical thing, get it in phase. And then I think they felt that the rescuers were getting a little bit too enthusiastic. So, I mean, it was a heck of a thump. And they did away with that. And that probably went away, I'd guess, I don't remember, probably in the 80s, maybe early 80s. CPR came out in the 70s, and the precordial thump went away. And but I'm not going to the precordial thump. I will tell you this, the time to intervention is critical. The longer it takes you to intervene, the less chance this child or adult has. And if you would just worry on that and find an intelligent way to cut to that intervention time, intelligent way to teach them victim identification and scanning so that you don't get here, and then once you get here, somehow or another cut down the time that it takes you to do it. But that's probably one of our biggest challenges, at least in my environment. All right, this is how it came out. This is when they were in LSR, what was our highest level of intervention? We had 16 or 50%. We got over half of them back with those 5 hammocks in the water. Now, you can tell me all you want to, don't do that, but I'm going to say, like 32, 16 of them come back. Show me a better protocol and I will change. I'll change in a heartbeat. It'll be in my program day after tomorrow. But honest to goodness, guys, we've got to find a way to do something. And this may not be it, but find a way. We had 10 of them that took AR. 3 of them went into chest compressions. And 2 of them used AED. Now, of those 32, by the way, we had 4 fatalities, which you may have forgotten. 50% survived with just the abdominal thrust. In 20 of the 32 cases, IWI, interwater intervention, was used, and all but 1 of those survived. Now, by the way, let me make one thing crystal clear. I am not advocating you take on our protocol. That's your business. What I am advocating is for you to think about ways to cut down interwater intervention and put the heat on all of us guys at the national level to come up with something that does that, because that is the secret to success. Now, find a way, and find an intelligent way. And it may not be our protocol. Matter of fact, I would even encourage you to use it. I'm just trying to encourage you to think about this problem. Okay. 4 didn't survive. 2 were long immersion drownings. So out of 56,000 rescues, 63.8 million people, we lost 4. 4 we lost, 2 were long immersion. Our guards dismissed them. I'd love to say our guards are perfect. They're not. They're human. They're kids. in the most part. They make mistakes. They just missed them. Out of the two that we didn't miss, one of them, there was no thrust or IWI that was used. And the other one, there was the thrust used, but there was something going on with this victim because once he was on the deck, the paramedics couldn't get an airway. So whatever was happening, we still don't know. Probably will find out eventually, but we still don't know. So the whole thing is working pretty good, but it's still scary.
John, what was the age? Are you from age group, like on the...
For the LSRs?
Yeah.
Let me back up.
Back up.
If I can figure this out, if I can, I will hand it to you.
No problem.
Okay.
I'll do more than that.
Yeah. Where was age? There it is. This is the exact, these are the LSRs, all 32 of them. Is that what you wanted to see?
No, the four that you lost.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh.
And I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. I was thinking about, I should know that, but I don't. If I, trying to remember what I do remember, but putting all this data together has been
Because I
taking
was
a while.
wondering if any of that is...
They weren't.
stats and
Nothing stood out for hard. There was, I know the one was a man, the one where IWI was done that they couldn't get the intervention. I know the one that nothing was done was a preteen. The long immersion drownings, I'm not sure of what they were. But I do remember the guy that had the IWI done that couldn't get the airway, he was in his 30s or maybe even 40s. And the one where no IWI was done and was younger. So now I got to figure out where I was.
Can I ask a question on the highest level of intervention?
Yes, ma'am.
Slide?
Which way is it?
I think it's that. Keep going forward.
Keep going forward?
Forward, yes.
Okay.
This one. You had mentioned that when you pull them out and they automatically go into compressions only CPR
Absolutely.
while you're waiting?
Yep.
So does this
Well, now,
apply
whoa,
to-
let's back up. I don't want to make you think, I don't want to convince you I'm lying to you. I don't mind doing that, but not on this case. You have a protocol. You train the protocol. Now, then we get to the application. And once you hit that application, there's no telling what happened. The protocol all of these kids were trained on was 5 and only 5 hammocks in the water. Once they got the victim on the deck, start with chest compressions and do 5. And by that time, the equipment should be in place. And if the equipment doesn't show up, you just keep doing chest compressions. But our goal is 5. Now, what happened in all of these cases, like you'll see, the highest level was 3, and sometimes things get skipped. These aren't perfect people, and none of us are. It's like CPR. There's nobody in the world ever did CPR the way we were taught. We just got close. So I think that's the best. Did that help?
Yeah, the other question for me
I
perhaps
can't
was...
see you on the camera. Can you stand up for
did they have all the equipment right there? And so
Oh,
they were
yes,
able to
yes,
go
yes.
directly to-
Water parks aren't like your flat water pools. Almost all of our clients have paramedics. Not only paramedics, but they will have backboards. They won't have one backboard. They'll have 5 or 6. They'll have backboards around the places where they think they might need backboards. So equipment there is not a problem. Not all of them wear fanny packs with the mask in them. Some of them have, now you're getting me off the subject, but I'm going to go ahead. What you can realistically count on a lifeguard to do is to get the victim and get the victim out of the water. After that, they're toast. You're looking at a 16-year-old kid that's never seen a fatality before in their life, and if you don't have somebody right there on the deck to back up that kid, he's going to sit there and fumble finger around with this. And I don't care if your guards are super guards and perfect guards or wherever they came from. I'm telling you what I'm seeing. But in our water parks, we're multi-leveled. So as soon as before they even hit that deck, that head guard or supervisor is going to be there, and they're going to start immediately. That's the protocol we work. Very aggressive manager, very quick. The problem you have in a flat water pool, and by the way, let me also say this: it is much harder to guard a flat water pool than it is a water park. As far as I'm concerned, it's infinitely harder. Boring to tears, but it's just a much harder environment to protect. So I think I said all I wanted to say there, if that answered whatever question it was you had. I better hurry, or I'm going to be in trouble with somebody.
Follow up on that, the distinction between the water park and the lap pool, I guess, is what you're referring to as a flat water pool?
Yeah.
Is that strictly because of the boredom?
A lot of reasons. It's the boredom, it's the lack of attendance, it's the swimmer density, it's the lack of aggressive multi-level management. We have some flat water pools that are clients of ours, and it's like, here's a good question I don't know the answer to. I say, in a water park environment, we use as a standard, not as an absolute standard, but as a goal. We want our lifeguard to scan the zone in 15 seconds or less. Now I'm sitting there thinking about the classic L-shaped pool, and this kid's sitting in a corner chair, and there's another over by the driving well. There's 3 people in this pool. And I'm sitting there saying, there ain't no way I'd do that. If I was sitting in that chair, no way. But see, you get into the water park, and I'm on a wave pool, and waves are kicking up, and you watch the kids, they'll teach you how to scan. You get guards trained up, and you get them to buy into this, and they know that somebody's life's on that line, those waves kick on, you watch them hunch forward in that chair, and they'll start teaching you a lot about scanning. But they know they're going to find a victim. Travis's mother, she and I walked down the beach looking for shark's teeth. She finds them. I don't think I've ever found a shark's tooth in my life. So after about 5 minutes, what am I doing? Kind of sneaking a look at the girls in the bikinis going by, wandering off, looking out at the ocean. But I ain't looking for shark's teeth because I don't find them. That's classic human factors. So go look up the human factor book and you'll find out. I better hurry, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm probably already in trouble, but I don't care. All right, we got 50% with abdominal thrust, 4 didn't survive, we talked about that. All right, 3 years old, 3 years and under are more likely to become an LSR than rescue data suggests. Majority of these were in shallow water. The majority of 12 years and under, the time to intervention is longer than expected. That's the summary. Okay? Now, conclusions. Increase the complexity, then you're going to have the safety system complexity increases in a comparable fashion. Shallow water is not safe. Now this is another one, parental supervision. And all of these LSRs, the 12 and under, parents weren't there. The parents, like here's a question for you. When a guardian comes in with an 8-year-old, how close do they have to be? And these are all issues we need to deal with and come up with some sort of constructive rationale and a timely intervention. And if you don't get anything else from me, figure out how to cut the time to intervention down. I'll tell you one thing we tried that didn't work. We tried to do in-the-water resuscitation, and it doesn't cut the time down. It just doesn't. It takes you too long to get the mask up, to get the victim right. And also, one thing we train our guards on is if you're right by the deck or if you're having trouble positioning for abdominal thrust, you don't screw around with it, you extricate. If I'm right here and the deck's right there, I'm just going to put the kid on the deck, and they're going to handle it on the deck, and they'll start with chest thrust until all the equipment gets here. And that's the way it's going to be with anything. But we need to find ways to cut this intervention down. And we need to also desperately investigate the difference between theory, when you have this grand idea about something you think is going to work, and application. And I would put the backboard pop-out right in there, guys. It's beautiful. Oh, man, look at this. You slide water in there. But don't do it. And you can beat them with a club, and they still won't do it. All right, I think I'm done. That's me. Yes, sir.
Question for you. Since around the country, most codes that I've looked at anyway have wading pools defined as 2 feet or less.
Yeah.
Why did you pick the the range of 1 to 3 feet and then 3 to 5? Or do you have the less than 2 feet and less breakdown?
I had some data somewhere on that 3 feet. But see, in water parks, we usually don't have water that's 3 feet. We'll have water around play structures. I'll be about 2 feet deep. We'll have water in catch pools about 3.5 feet deep. Lazy rivers can run anywhere from 18 inches to 3 to 3.5. Now, they'll get up around 3 feet too. But we don't have hardly, I'm sure there is some stuff there that's like your typical children's play pools, but we don't have a lot of water that deep.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was data specifically for wading pools that were 2 feet or less. Your rescue
No,
data
I can tell you why we
just
picked 5.
Yeah.
Is because in a lot of codes, 5 feet is what defines deep water. A lot of state codes, deep water is defined as 5 or more or less than 5, yeah. All right, anything else I know that might help? Yes, ma'am?
I've seen studies regarding how well parents watch their children at beaches. Have you seen any studies or done any studies on how well they watch their children at water parks versus...
No, but that is a really good thing. For what we've done is, are you familiar with the Epstein system of drowning classification? If you're not, don't be embarrassed. I wasn't until last year. It's the way coroners classified drownings. We modified that to change the way we're collecting data, and that's a real good question: is how far away, how long before the parents arrived? Because that would be really outstanding data that I could go forth with and say, look, let's come up with some sort of rational rule for how long it ought to be before, or how close should a parent be to a child. But I would tell you this, in water parks, it is so common to have a child become an LSR and the parents be nowhere around. Matter of fact, the very first drowning I worked in water parks was in 1983. And it was a 7-year-old girl, and it took them over an hour to find her parents. And you know this, I mean, people come by and drop the kids off and think that you're going to be the aquatic babysitter, and you've got to have some backup. Okay, other questions? There were some more over here. Anything else I know that will be of use to you?
Well, if you're going to build a lazy river, how deep would you build it?
If I was going to build a
Because it's not in anyone's
I'll tell
code,
you right quick what I'd do. I'd talk to Water Technologies, who's my favorite aquatic development group, and say, how deep would this lazy river ought to be?
Those are all less than
You
3
know,
feet.
but they're not half as smart as you. I deal with
Well,
them all the time.
on the other hand,
You know,
they've built a few more water parks
for
than
the
I have.
concrete.
They built a few more water parks than I have, and I would also,
But they don't know
I
why
would
it's
talk to a
2.6
bunch
or
of them.
3
I wouldn't talk to just one of them, but I wouldn't go 18 inches and under,
No.
and I wouldn't go over 3.5. So I would probably be at 3 feet
Yeah,
on the
they're at
lazy river.
2.6.
But
3.
if you get up to 3.5 feet, you may have some people try to use your lazy river to baptize people with. That's one of our common problems, which is interesting. The guy asked me, Dr. John, what do I do? They walked in and wanted to baptize a guy. I said, when he says amen, you say amen. Leave it at that. Any other questions? Well, if I can answer any questions for you or help you, the mission of my company is to reduce the loss of life due to drowning. Send me an email if you have any questions. And I'm not sure my email address is there, but it's just John NASCO at AOL. And we do that. And you don't have to be about 50% of what we do is not for our clients. It's for other people. If we can help them, we will. If we know something will stop drowning, that's what it's about. I enjoyed visiting with you guys.